The second issue of Black Panther Blood Hunt opens up in a flashback. We're talking eons of flashback ago, before Wakanda was even a nation. We see a black woman, her wrists cuffed together in a shining silver manacle, fleeing from some large monster. And not just any monster. That is Varnae. And good God, is that guy ugly. Put on some floopid pants, my dude. So the woman has temporarily escaped Varnae's clutches. She raises her hands to the sky, shouting out for Khonshu to protect her, to guide her to freedom. But unfortunately, it's too little too late. Varnae grabs her and kills her, slashing open her stomach. Khonshu has no claim here. This land and this temple are mine, he declares. And soon he will become a god. Varnae drags the body back into the temple, smearing a trail of blood behind him. That is when Khonshu manifests, vowing to avenge the fallen woman. He wields two wicked-looking swords, but from the shadows, Bast tells him to hang back. If he acts now, he might kick off a war between the two different groups of African gods, the East African Aeneid, to whom Khonshu belongs, and the West African Orisha, to whom Bast belongs. This ongoing narrative is woven throughout the issue, moving back and forth with T'Challa's story, which we now return to. That panther that he ran into at the end of the last issue, it allows Bast to manifest, and she helps her champion out a little bit. First, she gives him some intelligence. Back in the day, Varnae found vibranium in the land that would become Wakanda. He used it to create shackles and a gateway through which he would evolve into a god. But that process would require a great sacrifice, so he started to gather up innocent victims, the people who would eventually become Wakandans. When the moonlight fell upon those shackles last night, Khonshu knew the full breadth of Varnae's plan, because that's how godly magic works, and so began acting against him. A collective of gods who operate at night was gathered. This included Khonshu and Bast, but also Gekre, Ptah, Eshu, and Koku, who was a god of flame. When they're brought the news about Varnae and his actions, they all agree to jump him and kick his ass. In the modern day, Bast admits that while they did defeat Varnae back then, they didn't destroy him, and that was their big mistake. They had drowned his temple, and without it, they thought that he wouldn't be a threat to anyone ever again. Bast's sister, Anuket, was the one who drowned the temple, flooding a portion of Wakanda. She asks for Anuket's help now, transporting T'Challa to the temple, and Anuket does. There's even a super cute part that I really liked where Anuket is like, "Oh, you expect me to fart Varnae now?" And Bast is like, "No, I expect him to." And she points over at T'Challa, and Anuket just smiles at him, is like, "Pity, he's beautiful." And I just love it. What is it with goddesses in the Marvel Universe falling in love with this man? How can one man be this hot? Elsewhere, Shuri does actually call Doctor Doom and ask for his help with, everything. He is, of course, a huge jerk about it in general, but he has one main concern that if Shuri can take care of it, he'd love to help. Why not? He won't accept Wakandan refugees so long as T'Challa the vampire remains at large. Doom will not risk letting him in. Doom would never admit it, but that's how much he fears T'Challa, much less a vampire-empowered T'Challa. Scene ends up going nowhere, but we have now seen Doom's presence and importance to Blood Hunt echoed in other parts of the Blood Hunt narrative, over in Strange Academy and now in the main story. So this is a cool way to maintain the idea of Doom's really important, that we're setting up his role here. In Bast's continuing flashback story, we then see the gods assault Varnae. They manage to free his prisoners and lead them to safety. Bast tells them to return to this location in 3 days. The gods will have removed this jerkhole by then, and this land is not only theirs, but they will be under her protection. The Wakandans will never be slaves again, she says. So we get to see the birth of Wakanda here. That's an unexpected bonus to this. Anyways, Anuket is transporting T'Challa to the temple through incredibly dark, incredibly deep waters, and so she feeds him some of her blood. And he is like, dude, this is hot. God blood is delicious. I totally get why the Blood Coven are sucking up Thor's blood. This infusion of godly energy helps to like reinforce T'Challa's sense of personhood. It reinvigorates him as a person, and combined with the effects of the heart-shaped herb, he is now thinking more clearly than ever. But he still isn't free of Blade's influence yet. He does head down to Varnae's temple, and a voice shouts for him to stop. He has entered into Atlantean waters, and if he doesn't leave now, this temple will be his tomb. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown's continued coverage of Bloodhunt, Episode 14, The Gods Think That Black Panther is Hot. I'm glad I'm writing these particular issue summaries back to back, because I think that I would get a little lost in the sauce otherwise. This issue is a really nice counterpoint to our last issue of Black Panther. Issue 1 was largely focused on T'Challa and his new mind state as a struggling vampire. It's all personal drama. This issue has pretty much none of that. How T'Challa feels about being a vampire is almost not even in this comic at all, except for that little bit with Anuket there at the end. Author Cheryl Eaton is counting on us having read the first issue, which would make a lot of sense, because this one explains, I suspect, all of the backstory that we're going to get about Varnae for this particular event. And that, for me, is the big reason that I had to get this miniseries. Not only do we have it confirmed that Varnae is our bad guy, but we also see an update/retcon about his origins and how/why he is the big bad evil guy of this story. And I really like that, because it's been 40 years since Varnae first appeared in Marvel Comics, and it's been almost 30 years since the last time he appeared. He is, to a modern reader, much like myself, pretty much a new character. Like I said, I've read him before in Night Stalkers, and I don't remember almost anything about him at that point. So, from a writing perspective, why not spiff up his origin a little bit? Why not tie him in with some more modern concepts? Having the African gods be the ones who originally stopped him not only like ups him as a threat level, like he goes from just some dude that Blade punched that one time to someone a group of African gods had to fight. They're not superheroes fighting him, right? They're gods. But this also solidifies Varnae as a larger threat than just Blade specific. He has now been brought into the world of Wakanda and Black Panther as well. Varnae's actions leading to the creation of Wakanda is really neat. It's some interesting mythology. And so even if he does end up stopped in Bloodhunt, and let's face it, we're talking about heroic fiction, he's gonna be stopped, he can still return in a later date to plague Wakanda or the Black Panther or Shuri or anyone connected with that. We just up the scope of Varnae from being a one-off Blade guy who he fights every apparently 30 years to potentially a more recurring threat. And from a bad guy perspective, that's really great. It's hard to find really good bad guys and keep them bad guys. And Varnae's just kind of a monster. And I kind of love the fact that he's just a monster. I do wish that we had a bit more of Varnae's motivation for becoming a god explained, though. Like, he wants to become a god. Sure, that's great. But why does he specifically want to become a god specifically? He's got a temple, he's got vampire followers, it appears that he's gone largely unchecked up to this point in his history. What is it about Varnae specifically that makes him want to move on to another plane of existence? This drive of his clearly spans eons, we are told, given that he is trying it again in modern times, so clearly he can exist for a long time. Like, it looks to me like Varnae has been alive since before Wakanda existed. He's been alive for thousands upon thousands of years. How is that different from being a god? I don't understand. Why bother with all of this? What's the difference between a god and someone who can't be killed in the Marvel Universe? Like, honestly, I'm asking over here. If this miniseries and explanation of Varnae's work is all the backstory that we're going to get, because, I mean, let's face it, we only have 2 issues of Bloodhunt left. We don't have time for a long flashback. then I would just like to know more about Varnae himself as a character in this. I do really love the lore here. This was another big reason that I wanted to get this series. Mythological tales are kind of just the historical precursors to superhero fiction in our real world. Like, if we didn't live in a world that had a well-structured copyright set of laws, and we didn't have the internet sharing all of our stories around, characters like Batman and Superman could have become mythological figures like Hercules and Zeus and all of these kinds of things, where you were just making stuff up around the campfire to inspire each other. It's kind of an end result of where we could have gotten if you look at history in a certain light. And so I love seeing the gods kind of getting to mix it up in the comic books. Characters like Thor and Hercules have been running around punching dudes for decades at this point. Odin really got a little bit more into the, like, I was an old Avenger back in Jason Aaron's Avengers 1 million BC concept. And so getting to see characters like Khonshu and Bast and Anuket getting in the mix now, I'm just down for that. I love that kind of thing. I want more of Marvel's gods to get involved in the stuff that's going on. And getting to see it here was just a lot of fun. We do get to see Shuri approach Doom for help as well, which feels natural given that it was set up in our first issue. But Doom says no, because he's scared of what T'Challa could do to him when vampirized and on the loose, which, to be fair, is a pretty reasonable fear to be had. But given that we know that Doctor Strange is going to approach Doctor Doom for aid, this sets up a precedent that it might not go so well for him. Doom's concern is what it always is, and that is Doom and Latveria. Saving the world? He'll get around to it, but he'll get around to it when he feels like it. So it's probably not a good thing for Steven. We then have the ending of this comic setting up a conflict with Atlantis again, which I'm not really super worried about. After all, we know that T'Challa succeeds. We saw it at the end of Blood Hunt issue 3. Normally, T'Challa, when dealing with Atlantis, is dealing directly with Namor, as they are both traditionally the kings of their respective nations. But not anymore. T'Challa gave up the throne of Wakanda, and last I remember, Namor was exiled. I think the last I knew of Namor, he was chilling in an American prison cell after getting the absolute crap beaten out of him. I think at the end of the last volume of Avengers. It might have been the storyline before the end of it. I know there's a miniseries coming up later this year written by Jason Aaron, kind of picking up the Namor plot thread that I'd like to get. So who is T'Challa going to be dealing with here? Can they handle a vampire-powered T'Challa? We don't really know. I do know that X-Men Curse of the Mutants introduced vampire Atlanteans. They were the Aquios something or other. I do not remember their Latin name that they went by. So I don't know if we're going to see them here or not. There is a character who has a hammerhead shark helmet, which could be Atuma, who is oftentimes one of Namor's greatest rivals for the throne of Atlantis. We don't know what's been going on with Atlantis since Namor has been, like, exiled and kind of cast out. So what's going to happen here? I don't really know. I'm kind of thinking that T'Challa's going to use that vampire influence to just be like, get out of my way, I don't want to hurt you. And the Atlanteans are gonna. Because again, we know he succeeds. They clearly don't stop him. All that said, I am surprised at how absolutely casual the Varnae reveal in this issue was. And, like, admittedly, it hasn't really been a plot point of Blood Hunt to explore how and why Blade is possessed. Everybody just kind of seems to have accepted that Blade is evil. But still, this is a big deal for the main story. You'd think that they would have saved this reveal to happen there instead of happening in a tie-in. And again, we do have it confirmed that this tie-in matters thanks to Blood Hunt issue 3, which could be Jed McKay's way of going, you need to pick this up. You're going to get important Varnae stuff over here, without explicitly telling us that and kind of blowing the big reveal. But I do think that this is kind of an awkward way to do it. It is clearly a good way to make me buy 3 more comic books, though, because here we are. On our next episode, we're going to be returning to the Midnight Suns miniseries as they work their way towards Blade, but a haunting vision takes them to a connected threat instead. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.